You're too big for him." The bride said it loud enough for 200 people to hear. And she smiled the entire time she said it. "My name is Marisol Vega, size 20. Standing alone at the back of a ballroom I never wanted to set foot in a navy dress I'd saved 3 months to afford. Holding a glass of champagne I was too nervous to even drink. And the man she said I was too big for, too fat, too poor, too nothing to ever deserve, was the most feared Mafia don on the eastern seaboard. The whole room went still. 200 faces turned to watch me break apart. They wanted me to shrink, to cry, to run for the door, the way the fat girl always runs. I almost did. God help me, I almost did. Then Dario Sorrentino set down his glass. He crossed that entire ballroom, past the judges, past the bosses, past the bride in her $10,000 gown, and he took my hand in front of every single person who had ever looked straight through me like I was a coat rack pushed against the wall. "She's the only woman I see," he said. Then he turned to the bride, his ex, the woman who had just tried to break me in half in front of the whole city. And he said something so quiet and so cold that the smile froze and died on her painted face. But here is what none of them knew. Not the bride, not the groom, not the 200 people holding their breath. By midnight, the fat girl they were all laughing at would be the only thing standing between the Sorrentino family and a betrayal that would leave that beautiful marble floor running red. Let me back up. Let me tell you exactly how I ended up there. I was never supposed to matter. That's not me feeling sorry for myself. It's just the truth of how I grew up. In my family, my cousin Bianca was the sun, and the rest of us were planets that orbited her and tried not to block her light. Bianca was thin and gold and beautiful. I was the big one, the quiet one, the one they sat at the end of the table and forgot to introduce. Marisol's so smart, my aunts would say, the way you say something to apologize for the rest of it. And I was smart. That part was true. While Bianca was learning how to be looked at, I was learning how to look closely, carefully at the things other people missed. I grew up to become a forensic document examiner, a question documents expert, if you want the official title. It is exactly as unglamorous as it sounds and exactly as powerful as you'd never guess. I can look at a signature and tell you whether the hand that wrote it was calm or shaking. I can date ink to within a year. I can take a forged will, a doctored contract, a fake confession, and pull it apart thread by thread until the lie underneath is naked on the table. I spent 8 years doing it for the district attorney's office. Then I went private because private paid the bills and didn't require me to watch good evidence get buried by bad men. Which is how, 8 months before that wedding, a man in a charcoal suit walked in my little office above a laundromat and changed my entire life. He didn't give a name at first. He said a single letter on my desk, a threat against his family, typed but hand-signed, and asked me one question. Is this real, or is someone trying to start a war in my house? I examined it for 40 minutes while he sat across from me, perfectly still, watching my hands the way most men watch a beautiful woman walk by. When I finished, I told him his signature was a forgery, a good one, but a forgery traced from a real document by someone inside his own organization. He went very quiet. Then he said, "You just saved a dozen lives, Miss Vega. Mine included." That was Dario Sorrentino. I didn't know what he was, not yet. By the time I found out, by the time I understood that the man bringing me coffee and arguing with me about old movies and looking at me like I hung the moon was the head of a crime family, I was already too far gone to care. He kept a secret, not because he was ashamed of me. The opposite. The day I put you on my arm in public, he told me once, is the day every enemy I have learns exactly where to aim. I won't do that to you, Marisol. Not until I've made the world safe enough to hold you in it. I told him I could take care of myself. He told me he knew, that it was the thing he loved most about me. And then he kissed my knuckles, one at a time, like each one was worth more than the ring on Bianca's finger. For 8 months, we lived in the cracks of the world. He couldn't take me to dinner where anyone might see us, so he learned to cook badly, gloriously, setting off the smoke alarm in that little apartment above the laundromat until we both gave up and ate burnt eggs at midnight and laughed until I couldn't breathe. He couldn't walk me down a street holding my hand, so he'd send a car at 2 in the morning, and we'd drive out past the edge of the city to where the highway went dark and empty, and we'd park and watch the stars and talk about everything and nothing until the sun came up over the water. He never once made me feel like a secret because I was something to be ashamed of. He made me feel like a treasure being kept out of reach of thieves. Tell me what you see, he'd say, late at night, and he didn't mean documents. He meant the world. He'd figured out that I read people the way I read paper. The pressure behind a smile, the tremor under a calm voice. And he hung on every word, this man who trusted almost no one alive, like my eyes were the most valuable thing he'd ever been allowed to borrow. One night, 3 months in, I worked up the nerve to ask him. Why me? I'd had just enough wine to be brave. You could have anyone, I said. Thin, beautiful, connected. Women who'd make sense standing next to you. So why are you sitting in a parked car at 3 in the morning with a big forensic examiner who lives over a laundromat? He didn't laugh. He didn't rush to flatter me, which is how I knew it was true. He just looked at me for a long moment. And then he said, because every other person in my life wants something from me. Power. Protection. A piece of what I have. You're the only one who ever looked at me and just saw a man worth telling the truth to. He folded my hand inside both of his. You're not too much, Marisol. You're the first thing in my entire life that ever felt like exactly enough. I didn't have an answer for that. I just held on. So that was the secret I carried into that ballroom. The man my cousin Bianca had wanted her entire life. The man her whole family had paraded her in front of for years, hoping he'd choose her, had instead, quietly, in a little office above a laundromat, chosen me. She just didn't know it yet. I hadn't even wanted to go to the wedding. But you don't say no to my family. My mother begged. My aunt's guilt. It's Bianca's day, Marisol. The least you can do is show up and be happy for her. So I put on the navy dress and I went, alone, expecting to spend the night against a wall, smiling at people who'd forget my name by dessert. I didn't know Dario would be there. He hadn't told me. I found out later he hadn't wanted me to worry. The Sorrentinos and Bianca's family, the Hales, were old business allies, and his attendance was expected. He'd planned to keep his distance all night, to protect me, to play the cold guest, and then slip away to see me later. That plan lasted exactly until Bianca opened her mouth. I'd been at the bar maybe 20 minutes when I felt the room shift, the way a room shifts when someone important enters it. I looked up, and there he was, across the floor in a black suit, and our eyes caught for half a second before we both looked away. My heart was pounding so hard I had to set my glass down. Bianca saw it. Of course she did. Bianca had spent her whole life tracking exactly where Dario Sorrentino's eyes went. And when she followed them on her own wedding night and found them landing on me, on her fat, forgettable cousin against the wall, something in her snapped. She came gliding over in that enormous white gown, 2 of her bridesmaids trailing behind her like a comet's tail, and she stopped in front of me. And she said it loud. She wanted an audience. She wanted to put me back in my place in front of the whole room, the way she had 1,000 times growing up. You're too big for him, Marisol. A laugh, light as a knife. Don't embarrass yourself staring. Men like Dario Sorrentino don't even see girls like you. And the room went quiet, and everyone waited, and I felt myself starting to fold inward, smaller and smaller, the way I'd been trained to fold my whole life. That's when his glass touched the table. I will remember the sound of it until the day I die. A single soft click of crystal on wood in a silent room. The sound of the most dangerous man on the coast deciding he was finished hiding. He crossed the floor. He didn't hurry. He never hurried. And he took my hand, gently, like it was something that might break, even on the least breakable woman in any room. And he laced his fingers through mine and faced my cousin on her wedding day. She's the only woman I see, he said. Calm. Final. Loud enough. Then he leaned just slightly toward Bianca, and he said the quiet thing, the thing that killed her smile. You spent 10 years wondering why I never chose you, Bianca. Now you know. I was waiting for someone real. I wish I could tell you I said something clever. I didn't. I just stood there with my hand in his and watched 200 people rearrange their entire understanding of me in real time. The fat cousin. The afterthought. On the arm of the one man every person in that room was afraid of. Bianca's face had gone the color of her dress. Her new husband, Roman, a smooth, handsome man I'd been introduced to exactly once and disliked instantly, appeared at her elbow, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes, steering her away, murmuring about the guests, about the schedule. Smile for them. Darling, people are watching. Dario walked me to a quiet corner near the tall windows, his hand never leaving the small of my back. I'm sorry, he said. I never meant for it to happen like that. In front of everyone. I wanted to give you a choice. You didn't take my choice, I said. You stood up for me. There's a difference. I looked up at him. Most people, when they see me get hurt, they look at their shoes. They wait for it to be over. You're the first person in my whole life who ever crossed a room. Something moved across his face, that rare, undone look he only ever showed me. I will cross any room on this earth for you, he said. I need you to understand that. There is no version of this where I let the world make you small. I believed him. I want you to know that. Whatever else happened that night, I never once doubted that the most feared man in the city would have burned that building down to keep me safe. What neither of us knew, standing by those windows, was that someone in that ballroom had already decided to burn it down first. Here is the thing about being invisible your whole life. You become very, very good at watching. While everyone else watched Bianca, I'd spent my life watching the room. And forensic work had sharpened that into something close to a superpower. I noticed the things that don't fit. The signature with the wrong pressure. The smile that arrives a half second too late. The detail that everyone else's eyes slide right past. So while Dario was pulled away by an old man who wanted his ear, and while I stood by the window pretending to admire the view, I watched the groom, Roman. And Roman was wrong. Everything about him was wrong, in the small ways my whole career had taught me to catch. He kept checking the room, but not like a nervous groom, like a man counting exits. When the elderly Sorrentino patriarch, Dario's father, Don Cesare, frail in a wheelchair near the head table, was brought in, Roman's whole body sharpened toward the old man like a compass finding north. And there was a leather folio under Roman's arm that he never once set down, not to greet a guest, not to kiss his bride, not for a single second. A man who won't put down a folder at his own wedding is a man carrying something that matters more to him than the wedding. I must have been staring because Roman caught me. For one long second, across the whole crowded room, the groom looked straight at me, the fat cousin nobody noticed, and his pleasant mask slipped, just for me, just for an instant. He didn't look away. He smiled, slow, and lifted his champagne in a small private toast in my direction, the way a man does when he wants you to know he has seen you seeing him. I know you're watching, that little toast said, and it won't matter. Then a passing waiter broke the line between us, and by the time the room cleared again, Roman was all teeth and charm, kissing some old woman's cheek, the perfect new son-in-law. But my skin had gone cold, because that look hadn't been a guilty man's panic. It had been a confident man's warning. Whatever Roman had come to that wedding to do, he had already decided that one overlooked woman in a navy dress could never be the thing that stopped him. He was about to learn how wrong a confident man can be. I told myself I was being paranoid. The forgery brain, seeing forgeries everywhere. I almost let it go. Then the toast began, and Roman stood, and he made his move. He spoke beautifully about family, about union, about honoring the old ways. And then he said he had a gift, a surprise for his new family. He crossed to Don Cesare, the old Don, and he opened the leather folio, and he laid a document across the old man's lap with a heavy gold pen. A partnership, Roman announced to the room, between the Hale family and the Sorrentino family. A merging of houses, blessed by this marriage. All it needs is Don Cesare's signature, here, in front of all these witnesses, to make our two families one forever. The room applauded. It was a lovely gesture. 200 people saw a son-in-law honoring a dying patriarch. I saw something else. I saw the document. Even from across the room, even upside down and far away, I saw the way the pages were assembled. Fresh top sheet. Older pages beneath, the slight color difference of paper aged at different rates. And I saw, on the page Roman was holding flat for the old man to sign, a block of small print above the signature line, and beneath that, on the page below, a signature that was already there. Don Cesare's signature, already on a document the old man had supposedly never seen. My blood went cold. I didn't think. I just moved. Don't sign that. My voice carried farther than I meant it to. The applause stumbled and stopped. 200 heads turned. Dario, halfway across the room, went still. Roman's smooth face twitched just once at the corner of the mouth. The same half-second too late tell I'd clocked an hour earlier. I walked toward the head table. My heart was a war drum. Every instinct from a lifetime of being told to sit down and be quiet screamed at me to sit down and be quiet. I did not sit down. That document has pages that were written at different times, I said. And there's already a signature on the page underneath the one you want to sign. Don Cesare, may I see it? Please. This is absurd, Roman snapped, snatching the folio half closed. Who is this woman? She's not even a real guest. She's the only woman I see, Dario said from the middle of the room in a voice like a door closing. And she's the best forensic document examiner in this country. Let her see the papers, Roman. It wasn't a request. The whole room understood that. Two of Dario's men had drifted, very casually, toward the exits. Roman's smile came back, but it was a costume now, and everyone could see the actor underneath. By all means, he said, sliding the folio across the table. Examine away. It's a marriage contract. There's nothing to find. He was wrong about that. I opened the folio under 200 pairs of eyes, and I did the thing I do better than almost anyone alive on this earth. I went still, and I went slow, and I read what was actually there instead of what I was supposed to see. It took me 90 seconds. This isn't a marriage contract, I said. My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. The top page is. The 4 pages underneath it are a transfer of controlling interest of every legitimate Sorrentino holding, the shipping company, the restaurants, the real estate, into a holding company. And the holding company isn't Roman's. I looked up. It's registered to the Dragon family. Out of the country. A murmur went through the room like wind through dry grass. The Dragons. Even I knew that name. Everyone knew that name. The Sorrentino's oldest, deadliest rivals. And this signature. I held up the underneath page, the one with Don Cesari's name already on it. The page Roman had buried beneath a sweet little marriage contract, so the old man would sign blind and never know what he'd really signed. This signature is a forgery. The pen pressure is even all the way through, which a real signature never is, because a real hand speeds up and slows down. The letters are too perfect. It was traced, probably from a check. I turned to Don Cesare, to the frail old man staring at me with sharp, furious, frightened eyes. Sir, somebody planned to put your name on the surrender of your entire family, and have 200 witnesses swear they watched you do it willingly. The marriage was never the point. The signature was the point. The wedding was just the room they needed you to be in. I will never forget the silence that followed. And I will never forget Bianca's face as she finally understood what she had married. That the man at her side had never wanted her at all. That she, the son, the gold one, the one the whole family orbited, had been nothing but a door he was using to get into a house he intended to steal. Roman moved fast. Cornered men always do. His hand went under his jacket and came out with a small black pistol. And the screaming started, and in the half-second it took him to decide who to point it at, he made the worst choice of his life. He pointed it at me, because I was the one who'd ruined it. The fat girl against the wall who turned out to be the most dangerous person in the room. I didn't even have time to be afraid, because Dario was already there. I don't fully know how he crossed that distance so fast. One instant he was 20 feet away, and the next he was a wall of black between me and the gun, his body shielding mine completely, his arms wrapped around me and turning me away from the threat, putting every inch of himself between Roman and me. I felt his heart slamming against my cheek. I heard him say low, "Just for me, I've got you. I have got you." The gun never fired, because Don Cesari's old hand, faster than anyone expected, closed over a heavy silver candlestick, and Dario's man Gio came over the table, and a dozen things happened at once that I didn't see because my face was pressed against the chest of the man who'd thrown his whole body around mine without a half-second of hesitation. When I looked again, Roman was on the floor, disarmed, 3 of Dario's men kneeling on him, and the document. The real one, the forged one, the evidence, was clutched safe in my hand because even with a gun pointed at my heart, I had not let go of the proof. Old habits. You don't drop the evidence. Not ever. They took Roman away through a side door. I didn't ask where. I knew the kind of world I'd walked into. I'd known it for 8 months. I made my peace with the not knowing a long time ago. And Bianca sat down right there on the floor of her own wedding in her enormous white gown and put her face in her hands. And for the first time in our entire lives, I felt something for my cousin that wasn't envy or hurt. I felt sorry for her. I crossed the room, me crossing a room for once, and I crouched down next to her and I said, "It's over. You're safe now. He can't touch your family's money or yours." I made sure of it before I opened my mouth. She looked up at me with wet, ruined eyes. "Why are you being kind to me?" she whispered. "After everything." "Because I'm not too big to be," I said. "I never was." "That was always your story, Bianca. It was never mine." My mother found me in the crowd a few minutes later. The same mother who had begged me to come be happy for Bianca, who had spent 34 years seating me at the far end of the table. She didn't seem to know what to do with her own hands. "Marisol," she kept saying, "Marisol, I never knew you were." And I realized she wasn't talking about the forgery or the gun or any of the night's chaos. She was looking at the man standing with his arm around me. She had spent my entire life quietly certain that no one like him would ever want a girl like me. And now she didn't have a single word for the world she suddenly found herself standing in. "You never knew a lot of things about me, Mama," I said. "Not cruel, just true. You were always too busy looking at Bianca to look at me." For once in her life, she had nothing to say. The Dragon plot died on that ballroom floor. The forged documents I caught didn't just save the Sorrentino Empire. They became the thread that unraveled an entire rival operation, though that's a longer story than we have time for tonight. What matters is what happened after. What matters is that Dario Sorrentino didn't take me home that night and hide me again. He took me home and asked me to never be hidden again. 1 year later, I'm standing in the same ballroom. Different reason this time. It's our wedding. I'm in a gown I didn't save 3 months for. Dario would burn the city down before he let me pay for my own dress. And I've learned to let him love me loudly, which is its own kind of work for a woman raised to be quiet. 200 people are here again. Some of the same faces. They look at me very differently now. Funny how that works. Funny how the same people who couldn't remember your name will memorize it the second the world decides you matter. But I didn't need the world to decide. That's the part it took me 34 years to learn. Bianca is here. We're not close. Some things don't heal all the way. But she came, and she cried, the good kind this time, and when she hugged me, she whispered, "You were always the real one." I just couldn't stand to see it. And Dario, my husband, the most feared man on the coast, the man who crossed a room for me when no one else on earth ever had. Dario stood at the front in his black suit and watched me walk toward him down that long marble aisle. 300 pounds of woman who was told her whole life she was too much, taking up every inch of space she pleased. When I reached him, he leaned in, and he said it again. The same 3 words from a year before, in the same room, that started all of this. "You're the only woman I see." And this time, I leaned in right back, and I said the words I'd earned the right to say. "I know," I told him. "I always was. You were just smart enough to notice first." He laughed, the real one, the rare one, the one only I ever get. And he kissed me in front of everyone, and not one single soul in that room would have dared to call me too big for anything ever again. So that's my story. The fat cousin nobody saw, who turned out to see everything, and who walked out of the worst night of her family's life on the arm of the only man who ever crossed a room to stand beside her. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me down in the comments. Have you ever been the person against the wall? The one they overlooked, underestimated, told to make yourself smaller? I want to hear about the moment you stopped folding, the moment you finally took up your space. Tell me your story. I read every single one, and somebody scrolling tonight needs to hear it. And if Marisol's story made you feel even a little bit taller in your chair, do me one favor before you go. Hit that like button, share this with a woman who needs the reminder that she was never too much, she was always exactly enough, and subscribe because the next story I'm about to tell you might be the best one yet. You won't believe who walks through the door next time.